The colony of New Dawn sat at the very edge of map space, where the bright highways of galactic civilization faded into darkness. From orbit, the settlement looked insignificant. A handful of cities, several farming regions, a mining network carved into the rust-colored mountains, 3 orbital platforms, 1 aging defense station. Nothing about it suggested importance. Nothing about it suggested value. That was exactly why most of the galaxy ignored it. Below the colony's pale blue sky, life moved peacefully. Children ran through the market squares. Cargo haulers drifted lazily toward landing pads. Farm drones floated over endless fields of silver grain that shimmered beneath twin suns. The settlement wasn't rich. It wasn't powerful. But it was home. For nearly 30,000 humans, New Dawn represented something priceless. A chance to build something of their own. A chance to start over. A chance to live beyond the crowded worlds of Earth. Unfortunately, frontier worlds often attracted attention from things civilized space preferred not to discuss. Pirates. Smugglers. Raiders. The farther one traveled from galactic capitals, the less protection existed. The less protection existed, the more predators appeared. And New Dawn was very far away. Inside Colony Administration Tower, Governor Elena Hart stared at the latest security report. Her expression darkened. Again. The same warning. The same concern. The same unanswered request. Across her desk sat Security Chief Marcus Reed, a former military officer whose grey hair and scarred face made him appear older than his 50 years. "You've read it?" he asked. Elena nodded. 3 cargo vessels attacked. Marcus folded his arms. Within 2 sectors. Silence settled between them. Neither liked what that meant. The attacks weren't random. The routes formed a pattern. A pattern moving closer. Elena exhaled slowly. "We sent another request?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "4th one this month." Response. Same as always. He activated a holodisplay. A message appeared. The insignia of the neighboring Verith coalition rotated above the text. Threat assessment remains minimal. No military intervention authorized. Continue local monitoring procedures. Elena closed her eyes. Minimal. That word again. Minimal. Apparently dead freighter crews were minimal. Missing cargo ships were minimal. Pirate sightings were minimal. Everything became minimal when it happened far enough away. Marcus shook his head. They don't care. No. They think we are exaggerating. They always do. Neither spoke for several seconds. Outside the office window, the colony stretched across the valley below. Lights sparkled beneath the evening sky. Families heading home. Workers finishing shifts. Children laughing. Normal lives. Lives depending on leaders who couldn't convince anyone danger was coming. Marcus finally broke the silence. "We should increase patrols." "With what ships?" "The old corvettes." "The old corvettes barely fly." "We still have them." Elena looked away. That was the problem. New Dawn had almost nothing. The colony wasn't strategically important enough for military protection. It wasn't economically important enough for political influence. It simply existed. A forgotten settlement at the edge of nowhere. And forgotten settlements often became targets. Several light years away, aboard a hidden station buried within an asteroid field, another meeting was taking place. Unlike New Dawn's government offices, this chamber echoed with violence. Weapons lined the walls. Battle trophies hung from steel supports. Scars covered nearly every individual present. They belonged to the Void Claws, one of the largest pirate coalitions operating beyond civilized space. Around a circular table sat captains from dozens of raiding fleets. Some were reptilian, others insectoid. Several belonged to species outlawed in multiple systems. Every one of them was dangerous. At the head of the table stood Captain Vorak, a towering alien covered in dark scales. His mechanical eye glowed crimson as he studied a holographic star map. A cluster of systems appeared. Trade routes. Mining worlds. Colonies. Potential targets. One location blinked repeatedly. New Dawn. A younger pirate frowned. That one. Vorak nodded. The human colony. Laughter spread around the chamber. Humans. Really? One pirate leaned back. What's special about it? Vorak zoomed the display. Nothing. More laughter. Another captain grinned. Exactly my kind of target. The room erupted with agreement. Weak defenses. No military presence. Limited allies. Minimal risk. Maximum profit. Everything pirates loved. One insectoid commander clicked his mandibles. Any response force nearby? Vorax shook his head. Closest significant fleet is weeks away. Neighboring governments? They've ignored repeated requests for assistance. That drew interest. Several captains exchanged glances. Ignored. Abandoned. Alone. Perfect. Vorax's mechanical eye narrowed. The colony believes help is coming. A cruel smile spread across his face. It isn't. The room filled with laughter once more. Nobody questioned the operation. Nobody expressed concern. To them, New Dawn wasn't a society. It wasn't a home. It wasn't a community. It was prey. And prey existed to be consumed. Back on New Dawn, evening settled across the colony. Restaurants filled with customers. Families gathered around dinner tables. Workers returned home. The stars emerged overhead. Beautiful. Peaceful. Silent. Governor Hart stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The wind carried distant laughter through the streets below. For a brief moment, everything looked normal. Safe. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling growing in her chest. Something was wrong. Some instinct warned her. The warnings. The reports. The missing ships. The unanswered requests. They formed a picture she desperately hoped was incorrect. Behind her, a communication terminal chimed. A new message. Elena quickly accessed it. Her shoulders slumped. Another rejection. Another refusal. Another government informing her that resources were unavailable. The colony was on its own. Again. She stared at the city lights below. Thousands of people. Thousands of lives. And nobody cared enough to help. Far beyond the colony skies, hidden in the darkness between stars, something moved. Then another signal appeared. Then another. Then dozens more. Deep space monitoring satellites began detecting unusual energy signatures. The readings were weak at first. Almost invisible. Then they multiplied. Rapidly. System operators frowned. Sensors recalibrated. Warnings appeared. Traffic controllers exchanged confused looks. One operator's face suddenly lost all color. His voice barely emerged above a whisper. That's impossible. More contacts appeared. Hundreds. Then hundreds more. The display became crowded with red indicators. A growing wave advancing toward New Dawn. An armada. A massive one. Alarms began sounding throughout the monitoring station. Emergency lights flashed red. Operators rushed between consoles. Reports flooded command networks. Security Chief Marcus Reed received the alert first. He stared at the incoming data. His blood turned cold. No. The numbers kept increasing. Too many. Far too many. His hand immediately moved toward the emergency communication channel. Across the system, long-range telescopes shifted toward the approaching threat. Images finally resolved. Warships. Carrier vessels. Assaut transport. Destroyers. An entire pirate fleet. No. Not a fleet. A coalition. The Void Claws had arrived. And they had come in force. Marcus looked at the final estimate appearing across his screen. His face went pale. Then he opened a direct channel to Governor Hart. The moment she answered, he spoke 3 words. Words that instantly shattered any remaining hope. They are here, Elena. The stars above New Dawn suddenly erupted with flashes of emerging warp signatures. One after another. Then dozens more. Then hundreds. A sea of hostile ships poured into the system. The massive pirate fleet had entered New Dawn skies. For a few terrible seconds after the pirate fleet arrived, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. Across New Dawn, millions of eyes turned toward the heavens. The night sky had changed. Moments ago, it had been filled with stars. Now it was filled with ships. Dark shapes emerged from warp space in endless waves. Massive carriers. Cruisers covered in weapon batteries. Assault barges designed for planetary raids. There were too many. Far too many. The realization spread across the colony like a shockwave. This wasn't a raid. This wasn't intimidation. This was an invasion. Emergency sirens erupted across every city. The peaceful evening vanished instantly. People abandoned restaurants. Parents grabbed children.
Veiclas kluja evacuation rotas.
The entire colony suddenly became a scene of panic. Governor Elena Hart stood inside the command center staring at the tactical display. Red icons covered the screen. Every sensor station reported the same thing. Hundreds of hostile vessels. Security Chief Marcus Reed's jaw tightened. Defense station online? An operator swallowed. Online.
Orbital platforms.
Online. Military readiness? The young technician hesitated. Marcus already knew why. New Dawn barely possessed a military. 3 aging corvettes. Several patrol ships. 1 orbital defense station older than some of the colony's residents. Against smugglers, it was enough. Against this? It was hopeless. Marcus looked around the room. Fear was visible on every face. Nobody needed to hear the numbers. Everyone understood. They were alone. And help was weeks away. If help came at all. High above the planet, the first battle began. The defense station fired. A brilliant lance of energy crossed space and slammed into the lead pirate destroyer. The ship exploded. Cheers erupted inside the command center. For exactly 3 seconds. Then hundreds of pirate guns answered. The darkness ignited. Beams of plasma. Missile swarms. Railgun strikes. Enough firepower to erase entire cities. The defense station disappeared inside a storm of explosions. Its shields collapsed almost instantly. Sections of the structure tore apart. Crew members were blown into space. Emergency broadcasts flooded every frequency. Then the station vanished in a white flash. Silence followed. The colony's greatest defense was gone. The battle had lasted less than 2 minutes. Inside the flagship of the Void Claws, Captain Vorak watched calmly. His mechanical eye processed incoming combat data. Minimal resistance. An insectoid officer clicked approvingly. Humans always overestimate themselves. Vorak observed the planet rotating beneath them. Cities. Factories. Population centers. Resources. Profit. Everything looked exactly as expected. Weak. Isolated. Forgotten. Begin planetary operations. Thousands of assault craft detached from a fleet. They descended like a plague. 10-year-old Emma Collins had never heard emergency sirens before. Not real ones. Only drills. Her school always treated them like games. Stay calm. Follow instructions. Move to shelter. Everything would be okay. Now she stood in her family's living room watching her mother frantically gather supplies. Her father was trying to activate emergency communications. Nothing worked. Networks were overloaded. Outside, screams echoed through the streets. Emma's younger brother Jake began crying. When are they coming? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. The first pirate ships entered atmosphere. Fire streaked across the sky. Buildings shook. Windows shattered. Then came the bombardment. Explosions erupted across industrial districts. Power stations vanished beneath pillars of flame. Communication arrays collapsed. Entire neighborhoods disappeared in seconds. The sky itself seemed to burn. People ran through streets illuminated by falling debris. Emergency responders rushed toward destruction only to find more destruction waiting. Everywhere they looked, another crisis emerged. Another fire. Another collapse. Another casualty report. The colony was dying. Marcus Reed wasn't willing to surrender. Not yet. Inside one of New Dawn's remaining military facilities, he stood before exhausted defenders. Farmers. Mechanics. Teachers. Miners. Volunteers.
Humans.
Many had never fired military weapons before, yet every one of them remained. Marcus looked at their faces. Terrified. Determined. Angry. They think we are weak. Nobody spoke. They think because we are isolated, we'll roll over and die. Weapons locked into place. They're wrong. A few nervous smiles appeared. Marcus continued. We hold the evacuation routes. What if they break through? Someone asked. Marcus's expression hardened. Then we make them pay for every meter. The defenders nodded. Fear remained. But something else appeared beside it. Resolve. Humanity's oldest weapon. The fighting reached the cities. Pirate dropships landed in waves. Heavily armed raiders poured into streets. Some species towered over humans. Others wore powered armor capable of crushing concrete. They expected panic. They expected surrender. Instead, they encountered resistance. Construction workers turned industrial equipment into barricades. Police officers held intersections long after ammunition ran out. Civilians carried wounded strangers through active combat zones. Again and again, ordinary people chose courage over safety. The pirates won every battle. But none of them were easy. Every block had to be taken. Every building had to be cleared. Every victory demanded blood. Human blood. Pirate blood. Both. Hours passed. Then more. The colony slowly collapsed. Defensive lines broke. Shelters were discovered. Escape routes disappeared. One city after another fell. The casualty reports became unbearable. Thousands dead. Thousands more injured. And worse still. Missing. Captured. Taken alive. At first, nobody understood why. Then the truth emerged. The pirates weren't just killing people. They were collecting them. Families were dragged into transport ships. Workers were chained together. Entire groups vanished into cargo holds. Slaves. The word spread through surviving communication channels. Slaves. The realization horrified everyone. This wasn't simply conquest. It was harvesting. Far away, inside neighboring star nations, reports began arriving. Government officials reviewed the situation. News networks aired footage. Analysts discussed pirate activity. Military leaders examined casualty projections. Most reached the same conclusion. Unfortunate. Tragic. But not unusual. Another frontier colony. Another pirate attack. Another distant problem. Meetings continued. Budgets were discussed. Trade agreements received greater attention. New Dawn became another file. Another statistic. Another disaster happening to someone else. The galaxy watched. And did nothing. Near midnight, Emma Collins sat among hundreds of prisoners inside a massive transport vessel. Her hand shook. Her brother clung to her side. Their mother sat nearby with a bloody bandage wrapped around one arm. Their father wasn't there. Nobody knew where he was. The cargo bay was packed with frightened colonists. Children cried. Adults stared silently at the floor. A few whispered prayers. Emma looked around. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. There were too many children. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Entire families had been separated. Some children sat alone. Others called endlessly for parents who never answered. A woman began sobbing uncontrollably. No one could comfort her. Because everyone feared the same thing. They didn't know where they were going. Or if they would ever come home. In the ruins of New Dawn's primary communication center, a single emergency terminal still functioned. Barely. The building had collapsed around it. Fire consumed nearby structures. Smoke filled the air. Bodies lay scattered throughout the wreckage. Among them crawled a wounded communications technician named Daniel Mercer. Every movement brought agony. A piece of shrapnel had pierced his chest. Blood soaked his uniform. He knew he was dying. The medical scans displayed on his wrist unit left no doubt. Minutes. Maybe less. Yet he kept crawling. Toward the terminal. Toward the one thing that still mattered. The emergency transmitter. He reached it. Collapsed beside it. Coughed blood onto the controls. The screen flickered. Power levels critical. Signal integrity unstable. Long-range transmission possible. One attempt remaining. Daniel laughed weakly. One attempt. That was all humanity needed. With trembling fingers, he opened a priority channel. Not to nearby governments. Not to neighboring systems. They had ignored every warning. Ignored every plea. Ignored every request for help. No. This message had only one destination. Earth. Daniel activated the transmitter. The emergency beacon began charging. Outside, New Dawn burned. Inside orbit, pirate ships filled the sky. Thousands were dead. Hundreds were being taken away. And among the captured were dozens upon dozens of children. Daniel looked toward the stars one final time. Then he pressed send. The message traveled through the darkness alone, across light years of empty space, past forgotten systems, past shipping lanes, past patrol routes, past worlds that had ignored every warning New Dawn had sent. The emergency transmission was weak, damaged, fragmented. Several relay stations nearly discarded it as corrupted data. Yet the signal carried the highest priority classification available to any human colony. Colony extinction event. The automated systems refused to ignore it. So the message continued, hour after hour, jump after jump, toward the birthplace of humanity, toward Earth. 3 days later, Earth. United Terran Government Communication Center. Geneva Megacomplex. The operator almost missed it. Thousands of signals flowed through the network every second. Trade reports, military updates, civilian communications, diplomatic traffic. The emergency packet appeared buried beneath routine data. A blinking red icon. Nothing more. At first. Then the system decoded the source. The operator froze. New Dawn. Priority Omega. Her expression changed instantly. Every technician nearby noticed. What is it? She didn't answer. She opened the packet. The room fell silent. Then someone whispered, "Oh God." The emergency transmission wasn't merely a message. It was evidence. Video files.
Combat recording.
Emergency broadcasts. Civilian distress calls.
Surveillance footage.
Final reports. Fragments of a dying colony's last moments. The recordings began spreading through secure government channels. Then military channels. Then emergency leadership networks. People watched. And nobody spoke. A father shielding his children from collapsing debris. A firefighter carrying injured civilians through burning streets. Volunteers forming defensive lines against armored raiders. Emergency workers refusing evacuation to continue rescuing survivors. The footage was chaotic. Raw. Unfiltered. Real. One video ended abruptly as its camera operator was killed by orbital bombardment. Another showed terrified prisoners being forced aboard transport ships. One recording captured children crying for parents who never answered. Every clip ended the same way. Violence.
Destruction.
Silence. No one in the viewing rooms moved after it finished. The quiet became unbearable. President Amelia Torres sat in the executive crisis chamber surrounded by advisors. The room had no windows, only screens. And every screen showed New Dawn. Burning. Destroyed. Gone. A civilian advisor finally broke the silence. Casualty estimates? An intelligence officer swallowed. Still compiling. Give me what we know. The officer looked sick. Thousands dead. Nobody reacted. The numbers hadn't fully settled yet. The real wound was elsewhere. The officer continued. Hundreds confirmed abducted. That got everyone's attention. The room became colder. The president's eyes narrowed. Abducted? Yes, Madam President. For ransom. The officer hesitated. No. No explanation was necessary. Everyone understood. Slavery still existed beyond civilized space. Officially condemned. Unofficially tolerated. Especially near frontier regions. The realization landed heavily. The people of New Dawn weren't missing. They had been taken. Across Earth, information began leaking. Not intentionally. It simply became impossible to contain. Someone talked. Someone shared footage. Someone uploaded recordings. Within hours, billions of humans were watching. Families gathered around screens. Workers stopped what they were doing. Students paused classes. Entire cities seemed to hold their breath. A miner on Mars watched footage of New Dawn's defenders. A shipbuilder orbiting Titan stared silently at the burning colony. A farmer in Argentina replayed a recording of frightened children being loaded onto pirate transports. Again, and again, and again. Humanity saw everything. Every death. Every act of courage. Every scream. Every loss. The reaction wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even grief. Not yet. What emerged first was anger. Cold anger. The kind that settles quietly before becoming something far more dangerous. Far away from Earth, the galaxy observed humanity's response. Political analysts began making predictions. Economic experts forecast sanctions. Diplomatic organizations prepared emergency conferences. Several alien governments issued public statements condemning the attack, mostly because they assumed humanity would demand statements. The Verith coalition immediately assembled diplomatic teams. One senior official sighed heavily. "We should prepare reparations proposals." Another nodded. "Trade penalties are likely." A third adjusted his data tablet. "They'll want investigations." Everyone agreed. That was how civilized nations responded. Formal complaints. Economic pressure. Political consequences. Predictable consequences. Manageable consequences. No one expected anything else. Humans had become respected members of galactic society. Reasonable. Professional. Measured. They would grieve. They would protest. They would negotiate. The system would continue. That was what everyone assumed. That assumption would soon become the most dangerous mistake in the galaxy. Deep beneath Earth's surface, inside a facility that officially did not exist, a sealed chamber opened. The personnel entering carried no insignias. No names.
No visible ranks.
Only authorization codes. Massive screens illuminated the darkness. The New Dawn recordings played repeatedly. Every angle. Every casualty report. Every sensor log. Every transmission. Analysts worked in absolute silence. A different atmosphere existed here.
No speeches. No outrage.
No political discussions. Only focus. The footage was examined frame by frame. Every pirate vessel identified. Every energy signature catalogued. Every communication frequency recorded. Patterns emerged. Then routes. Then names. Then affiliations. The void claws. The first pieces of a much larger puzzle. One analyst looked up from her station. They left tracks. Another nodded. More than they realize. A third officer examined captured sensor data. They weren't hiding. No. They thought nobody could follow them. The room grew quiet. Because everyone understood the implication. The pirates believed this operation was over. They thought New Dawn was finished. They thought the witnesses were dead. They thought the evidence had vanished. They were wrong. Hours later, another meeting began. Smaller. More private. More important. A military commander entered the chamber. The room stood immediately. Not because regulations required it. Because everyone present knew exactly who he was. Admiral Nathan Hale. Veteran of 3 frontier wars. Architect of multiple anti-piracy campaigns. A man known for speaking very little. He watched the footage without interruption. Without expression. Without movement. Minutes passed. Then more. The final recording appeared. Daniel Mercer's emergency transmission. The dying technician's face filled the screen. Blood covered his uniform. Smoke surrounded him. His voice was weak. Broken. Yet determined. The final words echoed through the chamber. Then the recording ended. Silence followed. No one dared speak. Admiral Hale stared at the dark screen. For several seconds he remained completely still. Then he looked toward the assembled officers. The expression on his face revealed nothing, which somehow made it worse. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Almost gentle. "Activate Protocol Black Horizon." Several officers immediately stiffened. One analyst visibly paled. Another looked away. No one questioned the order. No one asked for clarification. Because everyone in the room knew exactly what it meant. The operation humanity had hoped never to use again had just been activated. Across the chamber, encrypted terminals suddenly came alive. Classified networks opened. Hidden files unlocked. Dormant systems awakened. Something had begun. Something the rest of the galaxy could not yet see. Admiral Hale watched the names of the Void Claws appear across the central display. One by one. Hundreds of them. Thousands. His gaze never left the screen. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he gave the order that would change everything. Find every last one of them. The Void Claws celebrated. Across hidden stations, pirate strongholds, and lawless outposts, alcohol flowed freely. The attack on New Dawn was already becoming legend. Captain Vorak's name spread through criminal networks. The colony had fallen in less than a day. Thousands dead. Hundreds captured. Millions of credits worth of resources seized. To the pirates, it was a perfect operation. Profitable. Efficient. Complete. As far as they were concerned, the story was over. The humans had lost. The galaxy had moved on. And New Dawn had become just another graveyard at the edge of space. None of them noticed the first hunter arriving. The vessel entered the system without broadcasting identification. It carried no military markings. No visible weapons.
No fleet escort.
Nothing that would attract attention. From the outside, it appeared to be an ordinary survey ship. Inside, dozens of intelligence specialists worked in complete silence. Screens filled with data surrounded them. Every pirate vessel identified at New Dawn. Every warp signature. Every communication burst. Every movement. Nothing had been forgotten. Commander Sarah Winters stood at the center of the room. Her eyes never left the displays. Status. A technician answered immediately. Recovered 73% of the pirate fleet's departure vectors. Cross-reference. Already running. Results. The technician paused. Then frowned. Interesting. Sarah looked over. What? The young analyst enlarged several star maps. Dozens of lines appeared. Most headed toward expected destinations. Pirate territories. Black markets. Known criminal systems. But several routes converged around locations that officially shouldn't exist. Hidden locations. Unregistered facilities. Secret infrastructure. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The pirates had left footprints. And now humanity was following them. Elsewhere, deep inside Terran Intelligence Command, information flooded in from hundreds of sources. Merchant reports. Smuggler communications. Bank transfers. Sensor records. Surveillance networks. Everything connected. Everything mattered. One analyst stared at the growing web displayed before him. The network stretched across entire sectors. Thousands of criminal contacts. Hundreds of pirate groups. Secret supply routes. Weapons dealers. Slave traders. Corrupt officials. The sheer scale was staggering. A junior officer looked up from her workstation. How do we already know this much? The room grew quiet. An older analyst smiled slightly. You really don't know? She shook her head. The veteran officer tapped the screen. Humans have been tracking criminal organizations for nearly 80 years. The younger woman blinked. 80. Officially, anti-piracy. Unofficially. The older analyst leaned back. We mapped everyone. The young officer stared. Everyone? Everyone. The word hung in the air. A chilling realization followed. Humanity had spent decades quietly collecting information. Watching. Recording. Learning. Not because they planned revenge. Because they believed someday they might need it. And now they did. The first pirate depot vanished 4 days later. No warning. No battle. No distress call. One moment it existed. The next it was gone. The station had been hidden inside a nebula used by smugglers. The location was supposed to be secret. Only trusted criminals knew about it. Yet somehow human forces found it. By the time nearby pirates investigated, all they discovered was wreckage. And a message. Simple. Direct. Human military operation. Remain where you are. We are coming. Panic spread immediately. The second depot lasted 3 days longer. The third lasted less than 24 hours. Then supply convoys started disappearing. Fuel shipments vanished. Weapons transports were intercepted. Communication relays went dark. Smuggling routes collapsed. Entire sections of criminal infrastructure simply stopped functioning. No one understood why. No one understood how. The speed terrified everyone. A pirate captain named Rex stared at the latest reports aboard his cruiser. This is impossible. His first officer nodded nervously. Maybe someone is leaking information. Who? The officer couldn't answer. Because every theory failed. Informants?
Impossible. Capture personnelle?
None. Compromised networks? No evidence. Yet humans kept appearing exactly where they shouldn't. Every time. Without fail. It was as though they could see through walls. Alien intelligence agencies became equally concerned. The Verith coalition had expected outrage, political pressure, diplomatic retaliation. Instead, pirate organizations across 3 sectors were collapsing. A senior intelligence director studied the reports with growing concern. How many targets hit? 42. In how many days? 9. The director slowly lowered his tablet. 42 criminal targets. Across multiple sectors. 9 days. The logistics alone should have been impossible. No military could react that quickly. Not legally. Not bureaucratically. Not realistically. Yet humanity was doing exactly that. The director looked toward his advisors. What aren't they telling us? Nobody had an answer. That question began spreading throughout the galaxy. What exactly were humans doing? The answer remained hidden. For now, deep beneath Earth's surface, classified archives continued opening. Records that had remained sealed for decades. Operation files. Intelligence programs.
Surveillance database.
Entire departments activated for the first time in years. One archive alone contained over 40 years of criminal tracking information. Pirate clans. Black market brokers. Corrupt shipping companies. Slave networks. Mercenary groups. Names. Locations. Associates. Patterns. Connections. Humanity had quietly built one of the largest intelligence maps in known space. Most governments never realized it existed. Even many human politicians didn't know its true scale. The database had one purpose. If innocent people disappeared, humanity would know where to start looking. The Void Claws finally noticed the pattern. At first, they dismissed individual losses. Then they blamed rivals. Then accidents. Then betrayal. But eventually reality became impossible to ignore. Someone was hunting them. Specifically them. Not random pirates. Not criminal groups in general. The Void Claws. Captain Vorak sat inside his command chamber reviewing casualty reports. Destroyed depots. Missing ships. Captured operatives. The list grew longer every day. His mechanical eye glowed brighter. Find out how. An officer bowed. We are trying. Try harder. The officer hurried away. For the first time since New Dawn, uncertainty entered the room. And uncertainty was dangerous. Because uncertainty became fear. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Human forces intercepted a small pirate courier vessel near an abandoned mining system. The ship attempted escape. Failed. Attempted self-destruction. Failed. Attempted resistance. Failed. Hours later, the courier's captain sat restrained inside a secure interrogation room. Across from him sat Commander Sarah Winters. The pirate looked exhausted. Terrified. Broken. Sarah placed several images on the table. Photographs from New Dawn. Families. Workers. Children. The pirate immediately looked away. Interesting. Guilt. That meant he knew something. Sarah leaned forward. Where are they? Silence. She waited.
No threats. No shouting.
Just patience. Minutes passed. Eventually the pirate's shoulders slumped. They've already been separated. Sarah's expression hardened. What do you mean? The pirate laughed bitterly. You think they're all together? No one spoke. The pirate looked up. Fear filled his eyes now. Not fear of humans. Fear of what his answer meant. The captives were divided. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. How many locations? The pirate swallowed. Then whispered the words that immediately transformed the entire operation. They are being sold. The room went silent. Sarah stared at him. The pirate continued. Different buyers. A pause. Different systems. Another pause. Then the final truth emerged. The hostages are scattered across the galaxy. The interrogation room remained silent long after the pirate finished speaking. The hostages are scattered across the galaxy. Commander Sarah Winters stared at him. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The weight of those words settled heavily over the room. Scattered. Not imprisoned together. Not hidden in a single location. Scattered. Hundreds of colonists from New Dawn had been divided and sold like cargo. Families separated. Parents from children. Brothers from sisters. Friends from friends. The operation had just become infinitely more complicated. And infinitely more personal. Sarah slowly stood. The pirate flinched. Not because she threatened him. Because she didn't. The calmness frightened him far more. Get him food. The guards looked surprised. Sarah turned toward the door. And medical treatment. The pirate blinked. You aren't going to kill me? Sarah paused. Then looked back. Her eyes contained something the pirate could not understand. You don't matter. The words hit harder than any threat. Then she left. The report reached Earth less than an hour later. Admiral Nathan Hale read every line. Every location. Every name. Every suspected buyer. His expression never changed. But the room around him did. Several intelligence officers quietly exchanged looks. The situation was worsening. Not improving. The hostages were alive. That was good. But every passing day increased the distance between them. Every sale. Every transfer. Every jump through hyperspace. The victims disappeared deeper into criminal territory. One officer finally broke the silence. We can still recover them. Another nodded. It'll just take time. Hale looked up. Time. The one thing the captives didn't have. He turned toward a massive digital display covering the wall. Thousands of red markers illuminated the map. Criminal contacts. Pirate facilities. Known associates. The network stretched across half the galaxy. Most governments would see chaos. Human intelligence saw structure. Patterns. Connections. Weak points. Hale's gaze hardened. Accelerate everything. No one questioned the order. Because everyone in the room understood exactly what it meant. The hunt had entered a new phase. Meanwhile, panic spread through pirate space. The first rumors appeared on criminal communication channels. Then private networks. Then black market exchanges. Stories. Whispers. Warnings. At first, nobody believed them. A weapons smuggler vanished after selling supplies to the Void Claws. A pirate captain disappeared while changing stations. A slave broker's headquarters exploded hours after receiving a suspicious shipment. Each incident seemed unrelated, coincidental, until the numbers grew, and kept growing. Then fear began replacing skepticism. Captain Rex sat alone inside a docking bay hidden deep within outlaw territory. His hands trembled. The latest reports floated before him. 31 confirmed attacks. Dozens of captured personnel. Entire syndicates dismantled. He reread the casualty lists repeatedly. Every name belonged to someone connected to New Dawn. Not random targets. Specific targets. Purposeful targets. Someone knocked on his office door. Enter. His first officer stepped inside. The reptilian pirate looked nervous. Captain. What? The crews are asking questions. Rek frowned. What kind of questions? The officer hesitated. The humans. A chill passed through the room.
No vol dir que discussin humans any mura.
Not after recent events. Speak. The officer swallowed. There are stories. What stories? The pirate shifted uncomfortably. Then answered. The old stories. For the first time, genuine concern appeared on Rek's face. Across criminal space, ancient rumors resurfaced. Stories told by smugglers. Warnings whispered by aging pirates. Legends dismissed as exaggerations. Until now. A grizzled mercenary captain sat inside a crowded cantina speaking quietly to younger raiders. His mechanical arm rested against the table. Scars covered half his face. He had survived nearly 50 years beyond civilized space. That alone made people listen. One young pirate laughed. Humans aren't special. The old mercenary stared at him. You think this is about military strength? The younger pirate shrugged. What else would it be? The veteran leaned forward. The surrounding conversations slowly faded. People listened. Because everyone sensed something important was coming. The old mercenary spoke softly. When I was young, a pirate clan hit a human transport. Nobody interrupted. They killed 200 civilians. The young pirate rolled his eyes. So? The veteran's expression darkened. The clan vanished. A pause. Every single one. The room became quiet. How? The young pirate asked. The veteran laughed bitterly. That's the problem. What problem? No one knows. Another pause. Then came the sentence that chilled the room. They ran. Silence. They changed names. More silence. They switched species registrations. Nobody moved. They abandoned ships. The old mercenaries slowly looked around the room. Humans found them anyway. No one laughed anymore. As the story spread, pirate organizations began making desperate decisions. Some abandoned entire bases. Others destroyed records linking them to the Void Clause. Criminal financiers erased accounts. Mercenaries cancelled contracts. Informants disappeared. Entire syndicates vanished overnight. The chaos was unprecedented. Not because humans had attacked. Because humans hadn't stopped. Every day brought new losses. Every day brought new disappearances. Nobody understood how the hunt kept moving so quickly. The uncertainty was destroying morale. Fear filled the gaps where information should have been. And fear was contagious. The answer finally emerged from a source no one expected. A classified intelligence leak surfaced within several criminal networks. No one knew who released it. No one knew how it escaped. But the information spread rapidly. One phrase appeared repeatedly. Human-civilian recovery doctrine. Pirate leaders stared at the files in disbelief. The doctrine was old. Very old. Dating back centuries. Long before humanity joined galactic civilization. Long before first contact. The document was brutally simple. If civilians were abducted, recovery became the highest priority mission. If civilians were enslaved, every available resource could be redirected. If civilians disappeared, the pursuit continued indefinitely. No expiration date.
No geographic limits.
No political restrictions. No surrender conditions. The doctrine ended with a single statement. Protect the innocent. Bring them home. By any means necessary. Several pirate leaders dismissed it immediately. Others did not. Because suddenly everything made sense. The speed. The persistence. The obsession. The relentless pressure. The Void Clause hadn't attacked a random colony. They had triggered something ancient. Something humanity had carried for generations. Something far older than interstellar civilization itself. And now it was awake. Captain Vorak finally understood the danger. The realization arrived too late. He stood inside his flagship reviewing the latest intelligence reports. One after another. Destroyed depots. Captured operatives. Missing fleets. Abandoned allies. Even criminal organizations with no direct connection to New Dawn were severing ties. Nobody wanted human attention. Nobody wanted human scrutiny. Nobody wanted to be next. An officer rushed into the chamber. Panic filled his voice. Captain. Vorak turned. What now? The officer hesitated. That alone was alarming. What? The officer activated a holographic display. A massive asteroid fortress appeared. One of the largest Void Claw strongholds. Secret. Heavily defended. Protected by thousands of personnel. A fortress considered untouchable. Vorak frowned. What happened? The officer swallowed. Then answered. We lost contact 12 hours ago. The room grew silent. Communication failure? No. Sensor malfunction? No. Vorak's mechanical eye brightened. The officer looked sick. Reconnaissance footage appeared. The fortress should have been there. Instead, only debris remained. Fragments of metal drifted through empty space. Broken hull sections. Destroyed docking platforms. Scattered wreckage. Nothing else.
No survivors.
No distress calls.
No escape craft.
No evidence explaining what happened. Just destruction.
Absolute destruction.
The fortress had vanished in a single night attack. And no one had lived long enough to tell the story. The galaxy had stopped asking what humanity was doing. Now it was asking why. That question spread faster than any military report. It appeared in government briefings, intelligence meetings, corporate boardrooms, military academies, even criminal hideouts. The attacks against the Void Claws were no longer isolated incidents. They had become a campaign. Coordinated. Methodical. Relentless. Every day brought new reports. Another pirate base destroyed. Another smuggling network dismantled. Another slave broker missing. Another criminal organization disappearing from the star maps. The strangest part wasn't the violence. Wars happened all the time. The strange part was humanity's focus. Humans weren't seizing territory. They weren't demanding reparations. They weren't threatening neighboring governments. They weren't expanding borders. They weren't acting like a civilization at war. They were acting like hunters. And hunters only cared about one thing: the target. Inside the Verith Coalition Intelligence Directorate, Director Selvon stared at a wall-sized display. The elderly Verith had spent nearly 40 years studying interstellar conflicts. He had witnessed revolutions, pirate wars, economic collapses, border disputes. Yet this campaign disturbed him more than any of them, because he couldn't understand it. The data made no sense. A junior analyst approached. "We've compiled the latest human operations." Selvon nodded. "Show me." The display changed. Hundreds of points appeared. Every confirmed human strike. Every intercepted convoy. Every destroyed depot. Every captured criminal. The pattern became obvious immediately. Selvon frowned. They aren't targeting infrastructure. No. They aren't targeting military assets. No. His eyes narrowed. They're targeting connections. The analyst nodded. Every strike seemed designed to remove information. Intermediaries. Couriers. Slave traders. Financial handlers. People who knew where captives might be. Not strategic targets. Investigative targets. Selvon slowly sat back. A realization began forming. Humanity wasn't conducting a military campaign. They were conducting a search. That discovery triggered deeper investigations. Governments across multiple sectors began reviewing historical archives, old military records, ancient treaties, classified intelligence reports. The answers they found were unsettling. Very unsettling. Most species viewed war pragmatically. Territory, resources, political objectives. Human history revealed something different. Again and again, investigators encountered references to the same concept: civilian recovery priority. The phrase appeared repeatedly. Across centuries. Across conflicts. Across governments that no longer existed. A historian working for the coalition frowned at a recovered document. "That can't be right." Her colleague looked over. "What?" She enlarged the file. The document was ancient, dating back long before humanity reached the stars. Long before first contact. Long before anyone outside Earth knew humans existed. The title was simple: Doctrine of Recovery Operations. The historian read silently. Then she read it again. The implications were difficult to accept. Several days later, representatives from multiple governments gathered for a classified briefing. The room was packed. Military advisors, diplomats, intelligence chiefs. Everyone wanted answers. A historian stood before them. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from nervousness. From disbelief. The information she carried was disturbing. She activated the presentation. Ancient human records appeared. Images from wars fought centuries earlier. Cities destroyed. Refugee columns. Civilian evacuations. Rescue operations. The room watched quietly. The historian spoke. Humanity developed a unique military doctrine during its pre-spaceflight era. A military officer frowned. Unique how? She took a breath. Most civilizations prioritize strategic objectives. The room nodded. That was obvious. Humans eventually adopted a secondary priority. The next slide appeared. A single sentence. If civilians are taken, recovery becomes the mission. Silence. The historian continued. Originally, this doctrine evolved through centuries of conflict. Another slide appeared. Historical examples. Hostage rescues. Recovery campaigns. Prisoner extractions. Entire military operations launched solely to retrieve civilians. The room grew increasingly uncomfortable. One diplomat raised a hand. How long does this priority remain active? The historian hesitated. Then answered. It doesn't expire. Silence. A military advisor blinked. What? The doctrine contains no expiration date. The room became completely still. She enlarged another section. The text was clear. Recovery efforts continue until civilians are recovered, confirmed deceased, or all recovery options are exhausted. Several attendees exchanged worried glances. One intelligence officer leaned forward. What qualifies as exhausted options? The historian's expression darkened. Human records indicate the threshold is extremely high. Nobody liked that answer. The investigation continued. And the deeper they looked, the worse it became. Ancient human wars contained countless examples. Some operations lasted years. Others lasted decades. Entire governments redirected military resources to recover missing civilians. Not soldiers. Not officials. Ordinary civilians. Children. Families. Workers. Teachers. People. The doctrine appeared again and again throughout human history. Different names. Different governments. Different eras. Same principle. Bring them home. One intelligence officer finally voiced the question everyone feared. Has the doctrine ever been revoked? The historian shook her head. No. The room fell silent. Human governments had changed. Borders had changed. Technology had changed. The doctrine remained. Unchanged. 4 centuries. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Resolute Dawn, Commander Sarah Winters studied the growing recovery network. The scale was staggering. Every lead. Every rumor. Every suspicious transaction. Thousands of possibilities. Thousands of dead ends. Yet human analysts kept working. Sleep cycles shortened. Resources expanded. Additional ships joined the search. Nobody complained. Nobody questioned the effort. Because every file represented a person. Every name represented someone waiting to come home. Sarah stopped at one particular image. Emma Collins. Age 10. Missing. Her younger brother Jake. Missing. Mother. Missing. Father. Status unknown. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, then continued working. The mission wasn't abstract. Never had been. Every recovered civilian mattered. Every missing child mattered. Every family mattered. That belief fueled the entire operation. And everyone involved knew it. Far away, Captain Vorak finally received confirmation of the truth. Humanity wasn't seeking revenge. At least not primarily. That realization terrified him more than revenge ever could. Revenge eventually cools. Anger eventually fades. Hatred eventually weakens. Purpose does not. A hunter searching for stolen civilians would never stop. Not because of emotion. Because of obligation. Because of duty. Because they believed they had a responsibility to the people taken from New Dawn. Vorak stared at the latest intelligence reports. The humans weren't slowing down. If anything, they were accelerating. The Void Claws had become the center of the largest manhunt in modern galactic history. And it was only getting worse. Deep in a classified operations center, a sensor technician suddenly froze. His eyes widened. Then widened further. Commander. Sarah looked up immediately. What is it? The technician rapidly enlarged a series of tracking records. Warp signatures.
Cargo manifests.
Financial transfers. Communication intercepts. Pieces of information from dozens of unrelated sources. Individually meaningless. Together. A pattern. A real pattern. Not speculation. Not probability. Evidence. The room instantly came alive. Analysts rushed to verify the data. Cross-references poured in. Confirmation after confirmation appeared. Sarah stepped closer to the display. Her pulse accelerated. What have we got? The technician looked at her. For the first time in weeks, hope appeared in his voice. We found them. Silence. Every person in the room stopped working. Sarah stared. Explain. The display zoomed toward a remote sector beyond major trade routes. Several ships appeared.
Civilian transport.
Light escorts. Recently modified transponder signatures. False registrations.
Hidden cargo compartments.
The technician swallowed. Then pointed at the highlighted convoy. The first hostage transport. The room became absolutely silent. Months of searching. Thousands of leads. Hundreds of operations. And finally, a target. A real target. Sarah looked at the convoy moving through the darkness of space. Then at the estimated passenger list. Human civilians. Confirmed. Alive. The hunt had finally found its first trail. And now human scouts were tracking the convoy. The convoy drifted through the darkness of interstellar space. At first glance, it appeared ordinary. 3 cargo transports. 4 escort frigates. 1 heavily armed command vessel. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. That was precisely the point. The ships carried forged registrations from a legitimate shipping corporation. Their transponders matched official databases. Their flight plans appeared legal. To most observers, they were harmless traders crossing a forgotten sector. To humanity, they were kidnappers. And inside those cargo holds were people waiting to be saved. Commander Sarah Winters stood inside the operation center aboard the Resolute Dawn. The convoy floated in the center holographic display. Every ship highlighted. Every weapon mapped. Every possible escape route identified. Weeks of intelligence gathering had led to this moment. No one in the room spoke casually. No one relaxed. Because failure wasn't acceptable. If even one transport escaped, dozens of civilians could disappear forever. Sarah studied the tactical projections. Status. An analyst answered immediately. Target convoy maintaining course. Escort strength? 4 frigates, 1 command cruiser. Sarah nodded. Hidden assets? The analyst zoomed the display. 2 probable stealth escorts. A murmur moved through the room. That complicated things. The pirates expected trouble. Good. Humanity had planned for that. Sarah looked toward the fleet commander. Recommendation? The older officer smiled slightly. We proceed.
No hesitation. No uncertainty.
Because this operation hadn't been built around assumptions. It had been built around preparation. Several light minutes away, hidden within a debris field, the rescue force waited. Dark ships sat motionless among shattered asteroids. Passive systems only.
No emissions. No signatures.
Nothing detectable. The strike force had arrived 3 days earlier. They had spent 72 hours becoming invisible. Waiting. Watching. Learning. Every movement of the convoy had been analyzed. Every escort pattern studied. Every weakness identified. Now the trap was ready. Captain Ethan Cole sat inside the assault carrier Valiant. His team surrounded him. Special operations personnel. Boarding specialists. Medical units. Recovery teams. Not soldiers preparing for conquest. Rescuers preparing for extraction. The distinction mattered. It mattered a great deal. A communication light flashed. Sarah's image appeared. Final confirmation. Ethan nodded. Ready. Sarah looked around the crowded compartment. Every face focused on her. Every person understanding the stakes. Bring them home. Nothing else needed to be said. The transmission ended. The operation began. The pirates never saw the first move. Because the first move wasn't an attack. It was blindness. A hidden electronic warfare vessel activated. Not enough to alert the convoy. Just enough. Tiny disruptions appeared throughout pirate systems. Sensor delays. Communication lag.
Navigation glitches.
Small problems. Harmless problems. At least they appeared harmless. Then the second phase began. False sensor contacts emerged across local space. Ghost signals. Phantom vessels. Electronic noise. The convoy's escorts immediately reacted. Captain Zorvac aboard the command cruiser frowned. Investigate those contacts. His officers obeyed. Minutes passed. The contacts disappeared. Another cluster appeared elsewhere. Then another. Then another. The escorts repositioned repeatedly.
Adjusting formation.
Changing coverage zones. Creating gaps. Exactly as human planners intended. The trap closed. A dozen human vessels emerged from concealment simultaneously.
No dramatic warnings. No speeches. No threats.
1 second they weren't there. The next second they were. The pirate sensors exploded with alerts. Contact. Multiple warships. Where did they come from? Panic spread across the convoy. Captain Zorvac stared at his tactical display.
Impossible.
There had been nothing there. Nothing. Yet suddenly human ships surrounded the convoy from every direction. His instinct screamed. Ambush. Before he could issue orders, Human jamming systems activated fully. Communications collapsed. Targeting systems failed. Long-range transmissions died instantly. The convoy had been isolated. Completely. Then the shooting started. Human warships struck first. Precisely. Brutally. The opening volley targeted engines. Weapons arrays. Command systems. Not civilian transports. Not areas containing hostages. Every shot had been planned. Every target selected carefully. The nearest pirate frigate lost power instantly. The second suffered catastrophic reactor failure. The third attempted evasive maneuvers. A human railgun round pierced its bridge. The vessel drifted helplessly. The battle lasted less than 6 minutes. The escorts fought desperately. Human forces fought intelligently. There was a difference. A very important difference. One side reacted. The other had prepared. When the final pirate warship exploded, the convoy was defenseless. That was when the most dangerous phase began. Boarding operations. Captain Ethan Cole led the first assault team. Magnetic clamps locked onto the lead transport. Cutting torches ignited. Hull sections melted. The boarding team entered. Weapons raised. The corridors were narrow. Dark. Crowded. Perfect terrain for close-quarters combat. Pirates opened fire immediately. The humans pushed forward. Not recklessly. Methodically. Room by room. Deck by deck. Each advance carefully coordinated. Every movement protecting the captives hidden somewhere inside. A pirate barricade blocked one junction. The defenders expected a frontal assault. Instead, human engineers breached a maintenance tunnel and attacked from behind. Another resistance point used hostages as shields. Human teams disabled the pirates with stun rounds and precision fire. Again and again, experience defeated brutality. The rescue force advanced. Slowly. Relentlessly. Finally they reached the cargo holds. The doors opened. Silence greeted them. Rows of frightened people stared back. For several seconds, nobody moved. The captives looked exhausted. Malnourished. Terrified. Many expected another trick. Another cruelty. Another transfer. Then one little girl noticed the patch on Ethan's armor. A Terran insignia. Her eyes widened. "Mom." The whisper echoed through the hold. The woman beside her looked up. Then froze. More prisoners noticed. Then more. Disbelief spread across the room. Ethan slowly lowered his weapon. His voice was calm. Gentle. "You're safe." Nobody moved. The words seemed impossible. Safe. After everything that had happened. Safe. Then someone started crying. Another followed. Soon dozens of prisoners were sobbing openly. Not from fear. From relief. The rescue had actually come. Humanity had actually come. Medical teams entered immediately. Food distribution began. Identity verification started. Missing persons databases updated in real time. Families searched desperately for familiar names. Some found them. Many did not. The emotional reunions were powerful. The absences were worse. Sarah arrived aboard the transport several hours later. The sight nearly broke her heart. Children sleeping on medical blankets. Parents refusing to let go of rescued family members. Survivors staring silently at walls because they still couldn't believe freedom was real. One woman approached her. Middle-aged. Exhausted. Haunted. Sarah recognized her immediately. Maria Collins. Emma and Jake's mother. One of the missing colonists. Sarah felt hope rise. "Where are your children?" The woman's face collapsed. And suddenly Sarah knew the answer wouldn't be good. They took them. A cold silence followed. Sarah's stomach tightened. When? The sorting station. What sorting station? Maria began shaking. They separated everyone. Other survivors nearby overheard. Several started crying. One man slammed a fist against the wall. They wanted the children. The room fell silent. A terrible silence. Sarah felt dread spreading through her chest. Explain. Maria wiped tears from her face. The younger captives were removed first. Every word hurt. They said children were worth more. Sarah's hands clenched. Around her, human personnel became perfectly still. No one interrupted. No one moved. Maria continued. They sold them separately. The room seemed colder now. Much colder. The rescue had succeeded. Hundreds of civilians were alive because of it. Yet the children were still missing. Emma, Jake, dozens of others. Gone. Somewhere deeper inside the criminal network. The victory suddenly felt incomplete. Later, during survivor debriefings, another revelation emerged. At first it seemed insignificant. Just another detail. Another memory. Then analysts began paying attention. Several survivors described the same location. The same symbols. The same officers. The same conversations. Sarah entered the briefing room immediately. A rescued engineer pointed toward a holographic map. I've seen that insignia. Another survivor nodded. So have I. Sarah stepped closer. What insignia? The engineer enlarged a symbol recovered from pirate communications. A claw surrounding a black star. The room reacted instantly. Several survivors recognized it. They talked about it constantly. Who did? The guards. Sarah exchanged looks with her analysts. The engineer pointed toward a region beyond known pirate territories. A remote cluster of hidden systems. His voice trembled. That's where they said orders came from. The room became silent. Every intelligence officer leaned forward. Sarah's pulse accelerated. What exactly are you saying? The survivor swallowed. Then answered. We heard them discussing headquarters. A pause. They thought nobody was listening. Another pause. Then came the revelation that changed everything. The prisoners know where the Void Claw's leadership is hiding. The room remained silent after the survivor finished speaking. The prisoners know where the Void Claw's leadership is hiding. No one rushed to celebrate. No one assumed victory was near. Human intelligence officers had spent weeks chasing rumors. False leads. Dead informants. Abandoned stations. Pirates were experts at disappearing. One location was not enough. Not yet. Commander Sarah Winters looked toward the rescued engineer. Start from the beginning. The man nodded nervously. His name was Owen Mercer, a maintenance technician from New Dawn. Like many survivors, he still looked exhausted despite medical treatment. They didn't know I understood their language. Sarah immediately became interested. Which language? Krathic. Several analysts exchanged surprised looks. Krathic was rare. Difficult. Mostly spoken among criminal organizations operating beyond lawful space. Owen continued. The guards talked constantly. What about? Shipments. Profits. Buyers. His expression darkened. And someone named Karvek. The room froze. The name was unfamiliar. That alone made it important. Sarah immediately gestured toward the analysts. Run it. Within seconds, databases came alive. Millions of records flashed across displays. Known pirate captains. Criminal organizations. Mercenary leaders. Smugglers. Nothing. No direct match. That was strange. Very strange. A figure important enough to command the Void Claws should have left traces. Yet there was almost nothing. Sarah's instincts immediately warned her. Someone had spent years hiding this individual. The question was why. 3 hours later they had their answer. And nobody liked it. An intelligence analyst entered the operations room carrying a classified file. His face was pale. Commander. Sarah looked up. What did you find? The analyst activated the display. An image appeared. The room became quiet. Very quiet. The creature staring back at them was enormous. Nearly 3 meters tall. Covered in dark armored scales. One eye replaced by cybernetic implants. Countless scars crossed his body. Not ceremonial scars.
Combat scar.
The kind earned through violence. Years of violence. The analyst swallowed. His real name is Karvek the Black. Another image appeared. Destroyed settlements. Burning ships. Mass graves. Sarah's jaw tightened. What am I looking at? The analyst hesitated. Then answered. The worst pirate warlord in modern history. The room remained silent. Another image appeared. Then another. Then another. Every file seemed worse than the last. Entire colonies erased. Trade routes destroyed. Slave operations spanning multiple sectors. Assassinations. Massacres. Disappearances. Karvek's shadow appeared everywhere. Yet somehow he had avoided becoming publicly known. Most governments only knew fragments. Rumors. Whispers. Incomplete intelligence. Now the picture was finally becoming clear. And it was horrifying. Meanwhile, far beyond civilized space, Karvek sat inside his hidden fortress. The stronghold floated within a system that officially did not exist. Massive asteroid stations orbited a black dwarf star. Sensor arrays stretched millions of kilometers. Minefields protected every approach. Patrol fleets guarded every jump route. The fortress was considered untouchable. 4 years it had been. Karvek stood before a panoramic observation window. The black star illuminated his scarred face. His mood was excellent. Profits from New Dawn continued arriving. Weapons. Resources. Credits. Slaves. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Or so he believed. An officer approached cautiously. Lord Karvek. The giant pirate didn't turn. Report. The latest human attacks. Karvek laughed. A deep, mocking sound. They're still angry? Yes. They'll tire eventually. The officer hesitated. Karvek noticed immediately. That was dangerous. Very dangerous. Fear among subordinates usually meant bad news. What? The officer lowered his gaze. We've lost 6 additional depots. Karvek shrugged. Replace them. 3 command stations. Replace them. 9 transport groups. The warlord finally turned. His mechanical eye glowed red. The officer swallowed. Yet before Karvek could speak, another officer entered. Then another. Both looked equally terrified. Interesting. Very interesting. Because fear was becoming common. And Karvek hated fear. Several days later, hidden human intelligence vessels entered sectors no military had visited in decades. Silent. Invisible. Patient. The information gathered from survivors was proving accurate. Every clue led somewhere. Every route connected to another route. The network was tightening. Slowly. Relentlessly. Sarah watched the operation unfold from the Resolute Dawn. A web appeared across the tactical display. Lines connecting pirate stations. Supply routes. Safe houses. Financial transfers. The center of the web became obvious. One location. One name. Karvek. Everything pointed toward him. Every investigation. Every witness statement. Every intercepted communication. The realization brought no satisfaction. Only anger. Because another question remained unanswered. Why New Dawn? Out of thousands of colonies. Thousands. Why had Karvek chosen theirs? The answer arrived 48 hours later. And it made the room go silent. A recovered pirate communication finally revealed the truth. The recording was old. Captured from a destroyed command vessel. The audio crackled as it played. Then a voice emerged. Deep. Confident. Cruel. Karvek. There are easier targets. Another pirate's voice followed. Then why attack the humans? A low chuckle answered. The room listening aboard the Resolute Dawn became perfectly still. Because everyone sensed something terrible approaching. Karvek laughed again. They have a reputation. The second pirate sounded confused. What reputation? The warlord's voice hardened. People fear them. A pause. I want that fear. Sarah felt her stomach twist. The recording continued. If I break a human colony. Silence. Then, the galaxy will remember my name. The room remained motionless. Every person understood. New Dawn hadn't been selected for resources. Or territory. Or profit. Karvek had chosen them for prestige. 30,000 lives had become a marketing campaign. A reputation-building exercise. Nothing more. The hatred that swept through the room was immediate. Cold. Focused. Personal. Then came the final revelation. The worst revelation. Another recovered recording surfaced. This one from the early stages of the invasion. Again, Karvek's voice filled the room. Separate the younger captives. Sarah instantly sat forward. Every analyst did the same. The recording continued. One subordinate sounded uncertain. The children? Yes. Why? For several seconds only static answered. Then Karvek spoke, and every person listening would remember the words forever. Children bring higher prices. Silence. The room froze. No one breathed. No one moved. Karvek continued speaking as casually as if discussing cargo. Separate them immediately. The subordinate hesitated. Families will resist. The warlord laughed. A horrible sound. Then came the order. Their suffering is irrelevant. The recording ended. No one spoke afterward. No one needed to. The truth was finally undeniable. Karvek himself had ordered the children taken. Emma, Jake, dozens of others. Every missing child. Every shattered family. It all traced back to him. One decision. One monster. One target. 3 days later, Karvek's confidence finally began to crack. The first warning arrived through encrypted channels. Then another. Then 5 more. His officers gathered inside the command chamber. Fear filled the room. Real fear. Not rumors. Not speculation. Fear. Karvek reviewed the reports one after another. Destroyed listening posts. Missing patrols. Compromised supply routes. Human reconnaissance activity. Closer. 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 His mechanical eye brightened. No. An officer swallowed. We've confirmed multiple sightings. Another stepped forward. Long-range sensors detected stealth signatures. Karvek stared at the displays. For the first time since New Dawn, uncertainty appeared on his face. Human forces were no longer dismantling outer networks. No longer hunting subordinates. No longer targeting supply chains. They were approaching the center. Approaching him. The room remained silent as the latest intelligence report appeared. One line. One sentence. One fact. Human scouting elements had entered neighboring sectors. Karvek slowly looked toward the black star outside his fortress window. Then toward the officers waiting for orders. And for the first time, the pirate warlord realized a terrifying possibility. The humans had found the trail. And they were coming. The fortress was worse than anyone imagined. When the first complete reconnaissance package arrived aboard the Resolute Dawn, the operation center fell into stunned silence. Dozens of officers stared at the massive holographic projection floating above the central table. No one spoke. No one needed to. The fortress spoke for itself. An asteroid nearly 80 kilometers across drifted within the shadow of a dying black dwarf star. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a dead chunk of rock. Then the sensors peeled away the disguise. Weapons emerged. Hundreds of them. Massive plasma batteries buried beneath armored plates. Missile silos hidden inside rotating caverns. Defense platforms attached to the surface like metallic parasites. Shield generators protected by layers of reinforced armor. Minefields surrounded every approach vector. Patrol fleets orbited constantly. Stealth sensor arrays monitored nearby space. Every kilometer of the fortress had been designed for one purpose. Survival. Commander Sarah Winters slowly folded her arms. How many years? An intelligence officer answered. At least 20. The room remained quiet. 20 years. 20 years of preparation. 20 years of hidden construction. 20 years of stolen wealth transformed into defenses. No wonder Karvek had seemed untouchable. He had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. Far beyond the fortress, alien governments watched the intelligence reports with growing fascination. Then concern. Then disbelief. The Verith Coalition's Strategic Defense Bureau reviewed the fortress scans repeatedly. Each analysis reached the same conclusion.
Impossible.
The asteroid citadel was one of the most heavily defended locations ever discovered outside sovereign military territory. One senior strategist studied the projections. If humanity attacks directly. His colleague nodded. They lose. The strategist enlarged the defense network. Every approach corridor was covered. Every weakness protected. Every blind spot eliminated. They would need an entire fleet. The second strategist sighed. And even then. Neither finished the sentence. Because everyone knew the outcome. A frontal assault would become a massacre. Even if humans won. Karvek knew it too. The pirate warlord stood inside the central command chamber. Unlike previous weeks, confidence had finally returned. The fortress made him feel safe again. Protected. Untouchable. Thousands of loyal fighters filled the citadel. More than enough supplies for years. Enough weapons to fight a small war. The hidden system itself served as an additional shield. Even locating the fortress should have been impossible. Yet humanity had found it. That fact still bothered him. Deeply. Very deeply. One of his officers approached. Human fleet activity increasing. Karvek nodded. Expected. They appear to be gathering forces. A cruel smile appeared across his scarred face. Good. The officer looked surprised. Good. Karvek laughed. Let them come. His mechanical eye glowed. They'll break themselves against these walls. The officers exchanged uncertain glances. Some believed him. Others didn't. The recent months had taught everyone a dangerous lesson. Never underestimate humans. Ever. Meanwhile, human commanders faced a brutal reality. The fortress could be destroyed. That wasn't the problem. Humanity possessed more than enough firepower. The issue was what existed inside. During a classified briefing aboard the Resolute Dawn, Sarah studied the latest intelligence. Her expression darkened with every page. Additional rescue operations had recovered more captives, more witnesses, more information. And now a pattern was emerging. A terrible pattern. An intelligence specialist enlarged a section of the report. We've confirmed multiple prisoner transfers. Sarah nodded. We know. The analyst swallowed. These transfers all terminate here. He pointed directly at Karvek's fortress. The room became silent. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. No. The analyst nodded slowly. I'm afraid so. Another display appeared. Transport records. Slave manifests. Witness statements. Intercepted communications. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. The room suddenly felt colder. Much colder. Say it. The analyst looked down. Then spoke. The missing children are inside the fortress. No one moved. For several seconds, the only sound came from humming equipment. Then Sarah closed her eyes. Emma Collins. Jake Collins. Dozens of others. Every missing child from New Dawn. Not scattered across the galaxy. Not lost. Not gone. Inside the fortress. Inside Karvek's fortress. Alive. Hopefully. The realization changed everything. Absolutely everything. Hours later, the news reached Admiral Nathan Hale. The veteran commander stood alone inside his office. The report remained open before him. He read it once. Twice. 3 times. The words never changed. Children confirmed within target structure. Recovery priority absolute. Hale stared out the observation window. Earth hung in the distance. Blue. Peaceful. Beautiful. Millions of families continued living ordinary lives. Children attended schools. Parents tucked sons and daughters into bed. Normal things. Simple things. Things stolen from New Dawn. Hale's jaw tightened. The mission had never been about revenge. Now it became even more personal. Because every hour mattered. Every day mattered. Every child mattered. The next strategic meeting lasted nearly 14 hours. Every option was examined. Every possibility debated. The conclusions were grim.
Orbital bombardment.
Rejected. Too many civilian casualties. Siege. Rejected. The children might be moved. Covert infiltration? Unlikely. The fortress security was extraordinary. Large-scale assault? Catastrophic losses. The room grew increasingly frustrated. For the first time since New Dawn, humanity faced an obstacle that seemed impossible. One commander slammed a fist against the table. There has to be a way. Another shook her head. Not one that gets everyone out alive. Silence followed. Heavy silence. The kind that settles when nobody likes the truth. Because the truth was simple. Karvek knew exactly what protected him. The hostages. The children. The innocent. Humanity would never sacrifice them. And he was counting on that. The galaxy reached the same conclusion. Military analysts discussed the situation endlessly. News organizations aired simulations. Strategists ran projections. Every model produced similar outcomes. Either the humans attacked and killed civilians, or they hesitated and lost the hostages. There seemed to be no middle ground. No solution. No victory. Even some human allies quietly worried. Perhaps the mission had finally reached its limit. Perhaps Karvek had found the one defense humanity couldn't overcome. The fortress seemed unbeatable. And for the first time in months, hope began fading. Then something changed. Late one evening aboard the Resolute Dawn, Sarah entered the command center and immediately noticed the atmosphere. People were moving faster, talking quietly, working intensely. The mood felt different. Not defeated. Focused. She approached the tactical table. What happened? An officer looked up. His expression was strange. Half disbelief. Half excitement. Sarah frowned. What? The officer exchanged looks with several others. Then activated the central display. A completely new operation plan appeared. Not an assault. Not a siege. Something else. Something far more ambitious. Sarah studied it. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then she looked up. That's impossible. The officer smiled. That's what everyone said. Another commander entered the room carrying additional projections. The plan expanded further. Sarah's eyes widened. The room around her slowly filled with senior officers. Admiral Hale entered last. No one spoke immediately, because everyone was still trying to understand what they were seeing. The plan violated conventional military logic, ignored accepted doctrine, dismissed standard assumptions. It shouldn't work. It couldn't work. And yet, the calculations said otherwise. The room fell silent as Hale stepped toward the display. His gaze swept across the assembled officers, then toward the impossible plan waiting above the table. Finally he spoke. We are going to take the fortress. No one interrupted. No one breathed. The Admiral's voice remained calm. Steady. Certain. We are bringing every hostage home. The display illuminated the room. And for the first time, humanity revealed a plan that should have been impossible. Karvek's fortress had survived 20 years. 20 years of betrayals. 20 years of rival pirate attacks. 20 years of military patrols searching the outer sectors. 20 years of becoming a legend. Many believed it was indestructible. By sunrise, it would effectively cease to exist. And most of its defenders would never understand how it happened. The operation began 12 hours before the first shot was fired. That was the first secret. Humanity wasn't attacking the fortress. Humanity was dismantling it. Piece by piece. System by system. Layer by layer. Long before the assault fleet moved into position, dozens of invisible operations were already underway. Stealth reconnaissance craft infiltrated the outer sensor perimeter. Cyber warfare teams targeted communication relays. Specialized intelligence units activated sleeper assets hidden throughout pirate networks. Everything happened simultaneously.
No warnings. No announcements. No dramatic declarations.
Just preparation. The kind of preparation humanity had spent centuries mastering. Inside the fortress, life continued normally. Pirates gambled. Engineers performed maintenance. Security teams rotated shifts. Weapons officers monitored their stations. No one realized they were already under attack. At 2:17 Fortress time, a routine diagnostic request appeared within the central communications network. Nothing unusual. The request passed every security protocol, every authentication check, every firewall. Because it wasn't hostile. It had been inserted weeks earlier. Patiently. Quietly. Waiting. The request triggered a cascade of automated processes, each harmless by itself. Together. Catastrophic. One communication node shut down briefly. Then restarted. A backup routing system activated. An encryption protocol refreshed. A data archive transferred. The fortress systems adjusted automatically.
No alarm sounded.
No one noticed. That was the point. 3 levels below the command center, a senior pirate technician frowned at his console. A sensor array had stopped responding. Only for a moment. Then it came back online. Strange. He ran diagnostics. Everything appeared normal. The technician shrugged. The fortress was enormous. Minor glitches happened constantly. He logged the issue. Then moved on. 30 seconds later, 17 additional sensors quietly stopped reporting accurate data. No one noticed those either. Far beyond the fortress, hidden among dark asteroid clusters, human fleets waited. Silent. Invisible. Thousands of personnel watched countdown clocks. Nobody spoke unnecessarily. Nobody celebrated prematurely. This mission was too important. Too dangerous. Every person aboard every ship understood what was at stake. Not territory. Not resources. Children. Families. The innocent. The mission objective was simple. Bring them home. Everything else was secondary. Commander Sarah Winters stood inside the operation center aboard the Resolute Dawn. The massive tactical display floated before her. Every stage of the operation unfolded in real time. Phase 1. Successful. Phase 2. Successful. Phase 3. Successful. The speed was astonishing. Years of pirate confidence were collapsing in hours. Sarah looked toward the electronic warfare specialists. Status. A technician smiled. They still don't know. The room remained quiet. That answer was more dangerous than any weapon. Because surprise was the true force multiplier. And humanity still possessed it. At 3:41 Fortress time, the outer defense grid failed. Not dramatically.
No explosions.
No warning sirens. It simply stopped working. Hundreds of targeting systems suddenly received inaccurate coordinates. Missile batteries locked onto empty space. Tracking arrays developed phantom contacts. Defense algorithms began chasing ghosts. The fortress continued operating. Blindly. Unaware. A giant unknowingly walking toward a cliff. The first pirate officer realized something was wrong nearly 20 minutes later. Unfortunately for him, it was already too late. He rushed into the command center carrying a data tablet. Commander. The room looked up. What is it? The officer swallowed. We've lost synchronization with the outer sensor network. Several technicians frowned. One checked the data. Then another. Then another. Confusion spread rapidly. That confusion became concern. Concern became fear. Because the reports kept growing. Additional systems were malfunctioning. Backup systems were malfunctioning. Emergency systems were malfunctioning. Nothing made sense. The fortress had never behaved this way before. Never. Then the sky exploded. Human fleets emerged from stealth. Hundreds of vessels appeared simultaneously. The fortress alarm screamed. Red warning lights flooded every corridor. Pirates froze. Officers shouted. Weapons crews scrambled toward stations. Panic spread like wildfire. Because the impossible had happened. Humans were inside the defensive perimeter. Inside. No one should have been able to reach those positions. No one. Yet somehow they had. Karvek stormed into the command center. His enormous frame radiated fury. Report. No one answered immediately. That terrified him. Because pirates always answered. Even with bad news. Finally an officer found his voice. They bypassed the perimeter. How? No response. Another officer looked physically ill. Our sensors failed. Why? Again. No answer. Karvek felt something unfamiliar stirring deep inside him. Fear. Not fear of defeat. Fear of uncertainty. The fortress was supposed to make sense. This did not. The second stage began. Human electronic warfare units unleashed everything they had. Communication systems collapsed instantly. Defense coordination vanished. Command channels filled with false orders. Emergency frequencies carried fabricated reports. Pirate fleets began moving in contradictory directions. Some believed the attack was occurring on the western side of the fortress. Others believed it was eastern. Several commanders became convinced they were already surrounded. Confusion multiplied. Every minute increased the damage. Every minute weakened resistance. The fortress was fighting itself. Exactly as planned. Then the infiltration team struck. Human boarding craft launched from hidden carriers. Hundreds of them. Small. Fast. Difficult to detect. They penetrated the fortress through maintenance ports, cargo locks, ventilation access tunnels, and emergency server shafts. Places conventional military planners ignored. Places engineers remembered. Because engineers always remembered. The boarding team spread rapidly. Not toward command centers. Not toward weapon systems. toward infrastructure, power relays, shield generators, communication hubs, critical systems. Each objective had been identified months earlier. Every strike precise, every movement coordinated, every action serving the larger plan. Within 90 minutes the fortress began dying. One system at a time. Shield sections collapsed. Defense batteries shut down. Sensor networks disappeared. Power fluctuations spread throughout entire sectors. The giant asteroid fortress was no longer a fortress. It was becoming a prison. For the pirates trapped inside. Meanwhile, rescue teams moved toward the detention levels. This phase worried Sarah more than anything else. The hostages remained vulnerable. One desperate pirate commander could trigger disaster. One panicked decision could cost lives. Every second mattered. The rescue teams advanced carefully, methodically, room by room, hallway by hallway. The tension became unbearable. Then the first message arrived. Hostages secured. A cheer erupted aboard the Resolute Dawn. Not because the mission was finished. Because the children were alive. Alive. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. For the first time in weeks, hope felt real. The next reports arrived rapidly. Additional detention sectors secured. Additional civilians recovered. Additional children located. Medical teams deployed. Evacuation corridors established. Every report strengthened the impossible truth. The fortress was falling. And the hostages were surviving. Humanity had accomplished what every analyst declared impossible. They were defeating the fortress without sacrificing the innocent. Inside the detention blocks, terrified children watched armored figures enter. At first they feared more pirates, more buyers, more suffering. Then they saw the insignias. Human insignias. A little girl began crying. Another child laughed hysterically. One boy simply collapsed. Months of fear finally overwhelming him. The rescuers moved quickly, gently, professionally. A soldier knelt before a frightened child. "We've got you." The child stared, unable to believe it. The soldier smiled. "You're going home." The word spread through the detention complex. Home, home, home. The word became a miracle. By dawn, organized pirate resistance no longer existed. Entire command structures had collapsed. Weapons lay abandoned. Fighters surrendered. Others fled deeper into the fortress. Some simply disappeared. The legendary citadel had become chaos. A nightmare. A graveyard of shattered confidence. Across the galaxy, observers watched in disbelief. Military experts replayed the operation repeatedly. None could fully understand it. The fortress should have survived. The fortress should have resisted. The fortress should have inflicted catastrophic losses. Instead, it had collapsed from within, as if a ghost army had dismantled it piece by piece. Only one objective remained. Karvek, the monster responsible for everything. The man who ordered New Dawn destroyed. The man who sold children. The man who built his reputation on suffering. Human strike teams converged on the command sector. Corridors filled with gunfire. Explosions echoed through armored halls. The hunt accelerated. Faster. Closer. Closer still. Finally they breached the command chamber. Weapons raised. Ready. Prepared. The doors exploded inward. Smoke cleared. Silence followed. The room was empty. Completely empty. For several seconds nobody moved. Then an officer discovered the evidence. A hidden escape route. Recently activated. Very recently. Sarah received the report moments later. Her expression hardened. Karvek had escaped. Only minutes before capture. The fortress had fallen. The hostages were safe. The pirates were defeated. But the monster responsible had slipped away into the darkness. Karvek had spent most of his life making others run. Now he was the one running. The irony was not lost on him. Nor was the fear. His escape vessel tore through hyperspace, fleeing the ruins of the fortress that had once seemed invincible. Hours earlier he had commanded thousands. Hours earlier entire sectors trembled when his name appeared in intelligence reports. Hours earlier he had possessed power. Now he possessed only distance. And distance was shrinking. The command deck of the escape ship felt far too quiet. The vessel was fast. One of the fastest Karvik owned. Built specifically for emergencies. Built specifically for survival. Yet every vibration of the engines felt wrong. Every sensor report felt threatening. Every incoming transmission made his mechanical eye flicker. The giant pirate sat motionless in the command chair. Thinking. Calculating. Planning. Humans had taken the fortress. That fact still felt impossible. 20 years. 20 years of preparation. Gone. Destroyed in a single night. Not through overwhelming force. Not through superior numbers. Through patience. Through intelligence. Through planning. The realization unsettled him. Because those qualities could not be bombed. Could not be intimidated. Could not be negotiated away. A communications officer turned toward him. Lord Karvik. The pirate looked up. What? We've reached the first safe harbor. Good. Finally. Something predictable. Karvik stood. The tension in the bridge eased slightly. The safe harbor belonged to an old ally. A criminal syndicate that had worked with him for years. They owed him favors. Resources. Loyalty. Or so he believed. The transmission connected. A reptilian crime boss appeared on the screen. Karvik immediately noticed something strange. Fear. Not fear of him. Fear of something else. Karvik. The crime boss sounded nervous. The pirate narrowed his eyes. I need supplies. Silence. The crime boss looked away. A very dangerous thing to do. Karvik.
The pirate's voice hardened. I wasn't making a request. The alien swallowed, then spoke. We can't help you. The bridge fell silent. Karvik stared. What? We can't. The crime boss looked genuinely terrified. Human intelligence contacted us. A cold feeling settled inside Karvik's chest. The alien continued. They informed us that anyone assisting you becomes part of the investigation. The transmission room seems smaller now. Much smaller. We've done business for years. I know. Then help me. The alien shook his head. No. Karvik rose slowly. Every crew member instinctively backed away. The crime boss's voice trembled. I'm sorry. Then the transmission ended. For several seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. Karvik stared at the empty screen. Disbelief slowly transformed into anger. Then something worse. Concern. One ally refusing assistance was unfortunate. 2 would be suspicious. 3 would be dangerous. The pirate immediately ordered another course change. Then another. Then another. He still possessed contacts. Still possessed influence. Still possessed options. Didn't he? The answer arrived over the next 4 days. Every answer was the same. A smuggler station refused docking permission. A hidden shipyard denied repairs. A mercenary fleet suddenly became unreachable. Financial accounts disappeared. Supply caches vanished. Informants stopped responding. One by one. System by system. Contact by contact. The network Karvik spent decades building evaporated. Not because humans destroyed it. Because everyone was abandoning him. Rumors spread faster than facts. And the rumors were terrifying. People whispered about the fortress. About the rescue. About the children. About the hunt. Stories traveled across criminal space. Some exaggerated. Others understated. None helped Karvik. An aging pirate captain finally explained the situation during a tense transmission. The old pirate's face looked exhausted. You don't understand. Karvik leaned forward. Explain. The captain laughed bitterly. You're poison. The words hung in the air. Karvik's mechanical eye glowed. What did you say? The captain didn't back down. A surprising display of courage. Or desperation. Every criminal organization in the sector knows what happened. Silence. The old pirate pointed directly at the screen. You attacked civilians. Karvik sneered. So? The captain's expression darkened. So the humans came. The bridge became silent. Everyone listening understood. The captain continued. They destroyed the void claws. A pause. They found the fortress. Another pause. They rescued the children. The old pirate leaned closer. And now they're looking for you. For the first time, Karvik had no response. Because the captain wasn't finished. The problem isn't that humanity hates you. The old pirate's voice dropped. The problem is nobody wants humanity looking at them. Then the transmission terminated. The realization slowly spread through Karvek's crew. Crew members disappeared. Not many. At first, a pilot vanished, then an engineer, then a navigation officer. Escape pods launched during maintenance windows. Small ships departed without authorization. People were abandoning him. The same people who once worshipped him. The same people who once feared him. Now, they feared humanity more. Weeks passed. The chase continued. Sector after sector. Jump after jump. Every destination failed. Every plan collapsed. Every escape route narrowed. Karvek began sleeping less, eating less, trusting no one. His enormous frame seemed smaller somehow. The confidence that once defined him was gone, replaced by constant tension, constant uncertainty, constant dread. Then a mystery began bothering him. A terrible mystery. How were humans finding him? Again, and again, and again. No matter where he ran, no matter how carefully he hid, no matter how often he changed ships, the pursuit remained close. Too close. The answer finally arrived when one of his surviving intelligence specialists made a discovery. The terrified officer rushed onto the bridge. His scales were pale, his hands shaking. Lord Karvek. The pirate stood immediately. What is it? The officer activated a display. Sensor logs appeared. Communication records. Tracking reports. Karvek stared, then stared harder. A horrible realization emerged. The humans weren't catching up. They were staying behind. Always behind. Maintaining distance. Watching. Following. Never rushing. Never overcommitting. The officer swallowed. His voice barely worked. I think. Karvek grabbed him. What? The officer trembled. They tracked us from the beginning. Silence. Absolute silence. The officer forced himself to continue. They never lost us. The bridge seemed to freeze. Karvek slowly released him. No. The officer nodded weakly. They allowed the escape. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The implications were horrifying. The humans hadn't failed to capture him. They had chosen not to. Why? The question haunted everyone aboard. Why let him run? Why permit weeks of pursuit? Why allow this endless chase? No answer came. Only fear. Hours later, the escape vessel emerged from hyperspace near a remote extraction point. One final route remained. One final contact. One final chance. Karvek sat in silence as the stars stabilized around the ship. The bridge crew worked nervously. No one spoke above a whisper. Then a sensor alarm sounded. Once. Twice. 3 times. The entire bridge froze. The sensor officer slowly looked up. His face had lost all color. Contact. Karvek turned. Where? The officer pointed toward the forward display. The stars shifted. A single ship appeared. Motionless. Waiting. Directly in front of the escape route. The vessel carried no pirate markings. No criminal insignias. Only the unmistakable emblem of humanity. And it had been waiting for him. The human ship did not move. It didn't need to. The vessel simply waited in the darkness, hanging between Karvek and the last escape route he had left. Silent, patient, certain. The pirate stared at the forward display. For several seconds, no one on the bridge spoke. No one breathed. The symbol on a human hull seemed larger than it should have been. Not because of size, because of meaning. Weeks of running, weeks of hiding, weeks of watching his empire crumble. And now the chase was over. Destroy it. The order came automatically, instinctively, the way Karvek had commanded his entire life. The weapons officer hesitated. Lord, Karvek turned. Fire. The officer swallowed, then obeyed. Energy lances erupted from the pirate vessel. Missiles followed. The bridge crew watched. The attacks raced toward the waiting human ship. Then something impossible happened. The human vessel disappeared. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. Every weapon struck empty space. The bridge fell silent. Sensor officers scrambled. Confusion erupted. What happened? Where'd it go? I lost the target. Then alarms exploded throughout the ship. The human vessel had reappeared behind them, exactly where no ship should have been able to reach. A cold realization spread through the bridge. This was not a battle. It had never been a battle. It was an arrest. A calm voice filled every communication channel. Human. Controlled. Emotionless. Karvek. The pirate froze. The voice continued. Power down your vessel. No srets. No anger. No shouting. Somehow that made it worse. Karvek clenched his fists. You've chased me across the galaxy. The answer came immediately. Yes. Why? No response. Not yet. Instead, the human voice repeated, Power down your vessel. Karvek laughed. The sound was harsh, broken, desperate. No. The battle lasted less than 4 minutes. Not because humanity was stronger, though it was. Not because humanity possessed better technology, though it did. The battle ended quickly because Karvek was alone. Completely alone. No allies arrived. No reinforcements answered. No criminal fleets appeared. Nobody wanted humanity's attention. The escape vessel lost engines first, then weapons, then shields. Human precision strikes disabled every critical system. Nothing exploded. Nothing catastrophic occurred. The vessel simply stopped functioning. Exactly as planned. Exactly as intended. Hours later, Karvek sat inside a reinforced detention chamber. For the first time in decades, there were no weapons within his reach. No followers. No escape routes. No power. Only silence. The chamber door opened. Commander Sarah Winters entered. 2 security personnel followed. Karvek stared at her. The human stared back. Neither spoke immediately. The silence stretched. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Meaningful. Finally, Karvek laughed. A hollow sound. You won. Sarah remained expressionless. Yes. The pirate leaned back. Congratulations. No reaction. No satisfaction. No triumph. That bothered him. Deeply. You're supposed to enjoy this. Sarah's gaze never left him. This isn't about enjoyment. The answer confused him. After everything. After all the destruction. How could it not be? Several minutes passed. Then Karvek finally asked the question that had haunted him for months. The question he could never understand. The question no intelligence report could answer. The question that had destroyed his empire. Why? Sarah remained silent. The pirate leaned forward. His voice grew sharper. 1 colony. No response. 1 insignificant colony. The room seemed colder. 1 settlement at the edge of nowhere. His mechanical eye focused on her. You destroyed everything. His voice rose. You hunted fleets. You crossed sectors. You spent fortunes. You launched military operations. The pirate slammed his fist against the table. For what? The chamber echoed with the sound. Then silence returned. Sarah finally spoke. And when she did, her voice was quiet. Very quiet. The kind of quiet that forces people to listen. You still don't understand. Sarah stepped toward the transparent observation panel. Stars filled the darkness beyond. For a moment, she simply stared at them. Then she spoke. New Dawn wasn't important because of where it was. Karvek frowned. It wasn't important because of resources. Silence. It wasn't important because of strategic value. The pirate's confusion deepened. Then what made it important? Sarah turned toward him. And for the first time, he saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Not hatred. Not rage. Something deeper. Something stronger. It was home. The words settled heavily between them. Karvek stared. Sarah continued. There were teachers there. Images flashed through her memory. Faces. Names. Lives. The woman who taught mathematics. The old mechanic who repaired farm equipment. The nurse who delivered half the colony's children. The engineers. The farmers. The families. Her voice remained steady, but emotion lived beneath every word. You looked at population numbers. The pirate remained silent. We looked at people. Sarah activated a display. Photographs appeared. Recovered colony records. Family images. School events. Birthday celebrations. Urvinai moments. Beautiful moments. Karvek watched. Confused. The first image showed children playing beneath the artificial sky of New Dawn. The second showed a family gathered around a dinner table. The third showed a classroom. A teacher smiling. Students laughing. Sarah pointed. Her name was Hannah Ortiz. Karvek said nothing. She taught history. Another image appeared. An elderly man standing beside agricultural equipment. David Mercer. Another image. A young mother holding twins. Lena Walsh. More photographs appeared. Dozens. Hundreds. Faces. Lives. People. Sarah looked directly at him. Those weren't statistics. The pirate remained motionless. They weren't economic assets. Another pause. They weren't collateral damage. The chamber had become completely silent. Sarah's voice softened. They were ours. Something shifted inside Karvek. For the first time since his capture, uncertainty appeared. Not fear. Something else. Understanding. Small. Incomplete. But growing. He remembered the attack. The planning sessions. The calculations. The profit estimates. He had never once considered the colonists as individuals. Never. To him, they had been numbers. Código. Targets. Assets. Nothing more. Yet every human he encountered treated them differently. Not as resources. As family. Not by blood, but by responsibility. A realization slowly emerged. The humans had not crossed the galaxy because New Dawn was strategically important. They crossed the galaxy because abandoning those people was impossible. Sarah sat down across from him. The anger she carried for months remained. But now it was controlled, focused, purposeful. The galaxy thinks this was revenge. Karvek looked up. Wasn't it? No. The answer surprised him. No. Sarah shook her head. Revenge was never the objective. The pirate stared. Then what had all of this been? Sarah answered before he could ask. Recovery. The word hung in the air. Recovery? We came for the hostages. She leaned forward. We came for the children. Another pause. We came for the families. Her eyes never left his. And we came for justice. Karvek slowly understood. Every battle, every operation, every sacrifice, everything had been connected to one goal. Bring them home. Not vengeance. Responsibility. The distinction changed everything. The pirate lowered his head. For the first time in decades, he felt small. Truly small. Not because humanity defeated him. Because he finally understood what he had been fighting. Not a military. Not a government. Not a fleet. An idea. A belief. A promise. Humanity never abandons its people. No matter how far away. No matter how expensive. No matter how difficult. No matter how long it takes. The realization terrified him more than any weapon ever could. Because such people could never be intimidated. Never be discouraged. Never be broken. Not when the innocent needed them. Sarah stood. The conversation was over. The mission was over. The hunt was over. She turned toward the exit, then paused. Without looking back, she spoke one final sentence. The sentence Karvek would remember for the rest of his life. You thought the galaxy feared human strength. The chamber door began opening. Sarah finally glanced over her shoulder. The pirate met her eyes, and in that moment he understood. The fear had never been about strength. It had never been about warships, or weapons, or soldiers. Humanity's true power was far more dangerous, far more relentless, far more terrifying. They loved their people enough to cross the galaxy for them, and they never stopped coming. The first transport arrived home beneath a sunrise. Not Earth's sunrise. New dawns. The colony had changed. Scars remained everywhere. Entire districts still sat in ruins. Burned foundations marked places where homes once stood. Memorial gardens covered sections of the settlement. Names were carved into black stone walls. Thousands of names. Those who never returned. Those who never got the chance. The losses would never disappear. But neither would the people. Because New Dawn still lived. And today, its people were coming home. Hundreds gathered near the landing fields. Some carried photographs. Others carried flowers. Many simply stood silently, waiting, hoping, praying. The transport descended slowly through the atmosphere. The crowd became quiet, very quiet. No speeches, no celebrations. Not yet, just anticipation. Then the landing gear touched the ground. The ramp lowered, and history seemed to stop. For one beautiful moment, nobody moved. Then a little girl appeared at the top of the ramp. Emma Collins. Alive. The crowd erupted. Her mother broke into tears immediately. Not graceful tears. Not controlled tears. The kind that come from carrying too much pain for too long. She ran forward. Emma saw her. For a second the child froze, as if she couldn't believe it. Then she ran too. The distance between them vanished. Mother and daughter collided in a desperate embrace. Neither wanted to let go. Neither could. Around them, similar reunions unfolded. Families reunited. Friends embraced. Children laughed and cried simultaneously. Parents held sons and daughters as if they feared they might disappear again. Everywhere, people found pieces of themselves they thought were lost forever. And for the first time since the attack, New Dawn felt alive. Commander Sarah Winters stood near the edge of the crowd, watching, not speaking, not interrupting. This moment belonged to the survivors, not the soldiers, not the admirals, not the politicians, the people. A young boy suddenly approached her. Jake Collins. He looked healthier now, safer, but his eyes still carried memories no child should possess. Sarah knelt. Jake stared at her for several seconds, then asked a simple question. Did you really come all that way to find us? The word struck harder than any battle. Sarah smiled softly. Of course. The boy looked confused. Why? Sarah glanced toward the families embracing around them. The answer felt obvious. Because you belong here. Jake thought about that, then nodded, as if the explanation made perfect sense. Maybe it did. The rebuilding continued for years. New homes replaced ruins. New schools replaced damaged buildings. New farms spread across the valleys. The colony grew stronger. Not because tragedy had made people stronger. Tragedy rarely did. The colony grew stronger because people refused to surrender to it. Human engineers volunteered for reconstruction. Medical teams remained long after the crisis ended. Families from Earth relocated to help rebuild communities. Entire industries donated resources. Children returned to classrooms. Teachers returned to teaching. Life returned. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. The colony nobody cared about had become one of the most important places in human space. Because everyone now understood what it represented. Not weakness, not vulnerability, resilience. Across the galaxy, governments studied the conflict. Military academies dedicated courses to it. Intelligence agencies analyzed every stage. Political leaders debated its implications. Again and again, the same conclusion emerged. The pirates had misunderstood humanity completely. They assumed humans would respond with outrage, protests, sanctions, political pressure. Instead, humanity responded with commitment. The difference changed history. The evidence became impossible to ignore. The rescue operations, the recovery efforts, the years of pursuit, the refusal to abandon civilians. Everything pointed toward one truth. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its fleets, never its technology, never its soldiers. It was something much harder to defeat. Responsibility. A civilization-wide belief that every innocent life mattered. A promise that no citizen would be forgotten. A doctrine older than starships, older than interstellar civilization, older than the nations that now carried it. Bring them home. Eventually, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency summit. Representatives arrived from hundreds of worlds. Some attended willingly, others reluctantly, but everyone came, because everyone understood what had happened, and everyone understood what nearly happened. The debate lasted weeks. Arguments filled countless chambers. Legal experts examined centuries of precedent. Military advisors provided testimony. Survivors spoke publicly. Their stories changed everything. A mother described losing her children. A rescued engineer recounted the slave transports. Former captives revealed what the pirates had planned. The galaxy listened, and the galaxy learned. When the final vote occurred, the result was overwhelming. Civilian trafficking became one of the most heavily punished crimes in galactic law. Entire enforcement frameworks were created. Joint anti-slavery task forces emerged. Governments that once ignored frontier kidnappings suddenly treated them as existential threats because they had witnessed the consequences, not merely the destruction of the Void Claws. The moral outrage that followed, the determination, the pursuit, the refusal to quit. Years later, students across dozens of species would study the New Dawn incident, not as a pirate attack, not as a military campaign, but as a lesson, a warning, a turning point. One question appeared in nearly every historical analysis. What destroyed the Void Claws? Some answered, human fleets. Others said, human intelligence. Still others credited special operations forces. All of them were partially correct. None of them reached the real answer. The Void Claws were destroyed the moment they chose their target. The moment they attacked New Dawn. The moment they took innocent people. The moment they kidnapped children. That was the decision that doomed them. Everything afterward was simply consequence. On the 10th anniversary of the attack, a memorial ceremony was held beneath New Dawn's restored skies. Thousands attended. Humans, aliens, survivors, military personnel, government officials, children who had once been hostages, many now adults, many with families of their own. At the center of the ceremony stood a simple monument. No weapons, no warships, no statues of soldiers, only names, because that had always been the point. People. Commander Sarah Winters, older now, stood before the gathering. The crowd fell silent. Everyone knew the words she was about to speak. The statement had become famous throughout the galaxy, not because it was a threat, because it was a promise. Sarah looked across the crowd, then toward the stars, and finally she spoke. You may fight us in war if you choose. The silence deepened. But if you harm our civilians, faces throughout the crowd remained fixed upon her. If you take our families. Somewhere nearby, Emma and Jake stood beside their mother. Alive. Home. Safe. If you steal our children. Sarah's voice never rose. It didn't need to. The truth carried enough weight. We will come for them. The wind moved softly across the memorial grounds. No matter how long it takes. The crowd listened. No matter how far you run. The stars appeared above the colony. Bright. Endless. No matter where you hide. Silence followed. A respectful silence. The kind reserved for truths that no longer need proving. Because the galaxy had already learned the lesson. Far too late for the Void Claws. Far too late for Karvek. Far too late for those who believe humanity would eventually stop. Humanity's greatest strength was never its fleet. It was never its weapons. It was never its armies. It was the simple promise that no one would be abandoned. And that promise had crossed the galaxy. The pirates thought they had won the day they attacked New Dawn. History remembered it differently. The attack on the colony was not the Void Claws' greatest victory. It was the mistake that destroyed them.